This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas. Magazine publisher and entrepreneur Judith Mancini is sharing captivating conversations with experts in their field about the latest trends in our ever-changing world to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Judith Mancini Today will spark your interest and inspire you to lead your best life ever. And now, here's Judith.
Judith Mancini Today is sponsored by Basic Brands, Inc., providing the highest quality specialty products in the natural food industry. Visit basicbrandsinc.com and enter JMT15 for your 15% discount on your first order, including their best-selling vitamin E ointment, which helps restore moisture and elasticity to your skin. Good morning, everybody. How are you today? Thank you for joining us on Judith Mancini Today. I am Judith Mancini. Let's start out with in the news and just giving you my one woman's opinion on all of this. You know, I am appalled, and I'm sure many of you are, over this chemical spill in Palestine, Ohio. And it's such a tragedy, and it's taken so long for our government to get there. They haven't even sent the president there, or the president hasn't decided to go, or maybe he doesn't want to go because he's afraid. And I think if you have somebody as the commander-in-chief, they should be brave enough to overcome their fears, is what I want to say. And it doesn't appear that this president, commander-in-chief, wants to go comfort these people in Palestine. This is a terrible thing that happened, and I'm of the opinion you can't just go take the dirt and dump it into states that don't want it, or dig a trench and light it on fire so that everything goes into the air and the water. And it's pretty clear that all of the animals and fish have been dying, and people have become very ill. And it took forever for the Secretary of Transportation, Mayor Buttigieg, to get over there. And I can't say, even though he was in the service, the armed services serving our country, I can't say that he displayed a lot of concern or bravery when going in there. I just don't understand it. And these people, these politicians that have gone in there to drink one sip of tap water, are you kidding me? They probably sloshed it around in their mouth, and when they were off camera, spit it out. This is disgusting. They're not giving enough of these people help, and we're going to end up having other terrible things happen in this country where nobody cares, such as burning down seed silos, seeds that feed the chickens and the turkeys and lay the eggs, and all of those animals and some of the other animals and all that eat seeds, and then the meat packing plants and the food production plants and storage areas and warehouses, they're burning down. And there are alternative medicine doctors, integrative health doctors, that seem to die under mysterious circumstances ever so often. And this is not covered in the news. This is covered in maybe a local paper or a site that has alternative medicine on it. This is very frightening because many of these deaths have been very superstitious. So what I want to know is what is happening. And I don't believe that these are all conspiracy theories. I believe that somebody is the head of this. You know, you can go look at the man who wrote about the blue beam, which talks about other powers coming into our country. And I'm talking about more things like aliens, perhaps the ones that were actually in these balloons. And over in Nevada, where they used to have lots of crashes and people would see lots of UFOs. Now, he has written about many things, and I think you should look it up. And unfortunately, I misplaced his name. But if we can find out what his name is, we could put that up in the chat for you to look up yourself and see the other articles that he has written where things have come true. I'm not saying that the blue beam is true, but I certainly think it's possible. And I think the reason that the government is trying to direct you in all different areas is because they don't want you to know what's really happening. Before I move on to some other news, I just wanted to mention a couple things that are going on that perhaps you're not aware of. One of them is that we're deciding to send troops into Taiwan. And Taiwan is being threatened by China, and they've put lots of ships around the island now. In other words, they don't want us anywhere near there. So we are thinking of sending between 100,000 and 200,000 troops to Taiwan. Now, there's no war in Taiwan yet, but it's very important to us for our manufacturing of different chips and things like that. Chips meaning chips you put into electronic devices like your cell phone, and now in your dishwasher and your clothes washer and your cars. There for a while, there was a shortage of cars, and that is because we couldn't get the chips to put in that do the automatic driving for you and set your thermostat and your speed limit and just all sorts of things in your car run on chips. So this is very important that we remain friendly with Taiwan. But more than that, Taiwan was founded by people who escaped from the Chinese communists, and before that, when there was the uprising with Japan, and right after that, the communists came in and all, and they escaped. The leader of China escaped, the prince, the one who was supposed to be ascending into that power. So they've been friendly to us, and we want to be friendly with them, and we need to protect them. So that's one thing I want to say. And I think a lot of these things are going on, like the balloons. Was that a distraction, or was it really somebody sending them over there? And I don't think even a weather balloon from China should be over our land. Particularly, why do they need to know about the weather over our nuclear silos? That's just craziness. So a lot of these things, I think, have been distractions that they just keep doing one disaster after another. And I think it would be wise to check into it yourself. And we'll find out what other places you can go to read about these things. Be sure to always read both sides of things, because that's just the way you should do it. You shouldn't just decide that one outlet is telling the truth or not embellishing the truth. Another one I want to mention, that they have now come out and said that there was nothing from a foreign country making this hit on some of our service people in embassies and military installations and other things. It's called the Havana syndrome, where microwaves are sent in to a building or an area, and people end up having hearing problems, sore throats, nausea, brain fog, all sorts of things. So today they came out with a report and said nobody had sent them. So none of it's true. Now that is a falsehood right there, I believe. I believe somebody has been targeting them, because way back before the 90s, Russia was working on this and doing it in other areas. So why wouldn't they be doing it? There is now an alliance between China, Iran, and Russia. It's quite obvious that Putin wants to overtake all the countries that he lost when the Soviet Union fell and he came into power. He wants the old Soviet Union back, and he wants to be the supreme leader. And now there's all sorts of rumors going around that he is ill, that he's not walking correctly, that in a meeting he was doing strange things with his feet. Well, if I sit in a long meeting, I gotta tell you, I probably do strange things with my feet too. You can't sit for too long before you cut the blood off in your feet. So, take everything with a grain of salt. I don't think that, and maybe there are, who knows? There could be people in his cabinet, his advisors, whomever, the military, maybe they will get to him with some of the poison they used on British people, the British spy, terrible poison that got to him and also got to his daughter. So take it with a grain of salt. These things tend to distract you, like the Bitcoin story, the cyber, whatever you call it. I can't even remember the name of the country now, but it seems that the lower people in the executives in that company are now resigning and saying, yeah, we did cause this. We are guilty. So you want to watch that. And some of the little banks are being eaten up by the big banks now. And this is all part of the idea that we need a digital currency. I'm against the digital currency, but I want you to read about that too and see what you think about it. My bank just joined with another bank and it's closing locations now. I personally don't like to do everything digitally. And one of them is banking because, yes, I do. I pay my bills. I deposit checks sometimes like that. I have, of course, things that are paid automatically from my bank, and I pay things from my bank itself. But if we don't have money to touch, other people will be touching it through these digital applications. And in a shake of your head, all your money could be gone out of your accounts. I had a terrible hack several months ago, which I put on the air about that. And you can go back through the episodes and hear about it. But this is not a good way to be going. And I think it's another distraction to get you away from what's really happening. So go ahead and look up Blue Beam on the computer, on the internet, and look and see what it says about it, because I think it's another big distraction. I think the government would like it to be a distraction, but I think there's some validity to it. So check it out. All right, let's see. Another thing I want to mention is voter fraud, and that is happening all over the country. But we won here in California because after an investigation, they discovered that 1.2 million votes were ineligible voters in LA County. Hey, talk about swinging an election. Okay, Newsom, we don't want any more of this happening. We don't want these people that don't want to uphold the law, and we don't want buying votes. So every state should be looking at this. Another thing that should be warranting your attention is the near collisions of several aircraft. I think there's been 4 different incidents lately. Upon landing on the runways, near misses. And let me tell you, you don't want to be in an airplane crash. So I think that our Secretary of Transportation better start investigating this and investigating how Amtrak is run and how the freight trains are run and all of this, because saying that you're going to fix infrastructure in the United States does not necessarily mean that you're going to change streets from one way to two ways. This is crazy. And renaming bridges and hiking trails and all of that. That's not why I want a Secretary of Transportation and one that looks at the infrastructure of the United States. So I do think that all of this is very important, but I have one thing that I want you to listen to, because spring break is coming up. And there are several cities that kids like to go to: Puerto Vallarta, Cabo San Lucas, cities that are on the water. There's some around Texas that they like to go to. And they like to go buy medicine. Even adults that are not in school and celebrating spring break seem to think it's a good idea to buy drugs, prescription drugs from Mexico. You could go to Tijuana and buy some. But now the cartels are getting into the business, and they're putting phony prescription drugs in there, like Adderall and arthritis prescription drugs and cure cancer prescription drugs or painkillers and things like that. And they have found out that 71% of the drugs that were tested by the United States, I don't know who tested them, but I can't remember. I can't remember every single detail. I'm sorry. You need to look these up yourself so you can get an idea of what's going on. 71% were tested positive for fentanyl. Now, it's the cartels who want to kill you. It's not the Mexicans, not the people, only the people that join the cartels. We still go to Mexico all the time, and we have a wonderful time because we love Mexico, and we go to great places, and we've taken so many vacations in Mexico throughout our lives and my kids' lives. I can't even remember how many. So what I wouldn't do is go into any pharmacies. Take your medications with you, and don't think you're going to get a deal buying cheap drugs in Mexico anymore, because it's no longer safe. You don't want to get a hold of fentanyl, and you won't need anything anymore. When my heart goes out to everybody who's lost a child to fentanyl, or even an adult. This is a horrible thing. It's like we're being invaded, as if we're at war, and we are at war with the cartels over the drugs. And that's another reason we need the borders to be strong. And then we need to check out who's exactly putting these in, who are the distributors. It's got to be people that are dressing and using trucks that are phony, that are putting them in these pharmacies. And the pharmacies are all over and easily available. You don't need a prescription for drugs in Mexico. You go see a doctor, and he tells you to go get a drug at a pharmacy, and you go get it. I know that because somebody in our party had to have a tetanus shot one time. So we went into the pharmacy, and the guy gave him a tetanus shot right there. Drop your drawers and get the tetanus shot right then and there. So that's why people go shopping for drugs in Mexico, and they're all along the boardwalks or by the harbors and all of that. So you need to be very, very careful. Now, as far as the Murdoch trial is going, I said I didn't think it should be on television, but I take that back, because I'm finding it fascinating. What I'm finding fascinating is how people try to persuade a jury or a group of people with their thoughts and their ideas. And in this case, obviously, if somebody is innocent or guilty, or if there is a shadow of a doubt if the person is guilty, which then ends in you're free to go. No contest, sort of speaking. Or you could get a hung jury because nobody can decide, and that's what they tell the judge, and he has to have declare a hung jury, and then the person goes back to prison, and then they have another trial, which could be another 2 years away. So, in my opinion, the district attorney, the prosecutor that is saying that Murdaugh is guilty of killing and murdering his wife and younger son is guilty, he is the worst prosecutor I've ever seen on a trial. And my experience only goes to what has ever been on television. So I don't watch the court channel or anything like that. But when there is a big trial, like I believe the first one on television was the O.J. Simpson trial, that was televised like that, and everybody had opinions to it and all. But both sides argued very well in that trial. I don't remember even seeing another trial that I followed more closely than this trial that's come on, and I only got interested in it when the prosecutor was giving his case and wandering around and repeating himself. And I know that's kind of a trick to wear down the witness on the stand, and it's very unusual for the accused to be on the stand as a witness. So that's a tactic to wear him down, and he'll say, okay, leave me alone. I did it. I did it. I did it. But I think he has been outdone by the defense. There are so many things that the defense has brought up that there is a reasonable doubt that he did not commit it. And I'll just point some out to you, and maybe you want to turn it on and see. And there's many reasons that the prosecutor said he did do it. But there's the difference between the height and where the shots came in, the projection of the shots that killed these people. In my mind, I don't care how angry you might be with your son or your wife, you would never shoot them in the face like that. Never. That's my opinion. And because of the difference in the height, it seems that it's very likely a shorter person than Alex could have shot them. There is the case of the horrible mishap by Paul, the son that was shot, in the case of the boat accident and what he had been doing before, and his disregard for people's safety and his underage drinking and all of that. And maybe this was revenge. I'm not accusing that family. That family is devastated. But who knows? Who knows who could have come on there? And how did they know? Did they actually run an analysis of the voice on the phone around the kennels? I don't see that, and I don't criticize police, but I criticize this investigation. I think it was very quick to indicting this man without more investigation going on. He could have sat in prison a little longer, and they could have waited to take it before the grand jury a little bit later to indict him. So I'm only interested in the lawful carriage of justice, and I find this trial very interesting in that regard. So you might want to turn your television on and watch that. Okay, so today I want to talk to you about feeding your mind and feeding your body. And are they interchangeable? I do believe they are. So first of all, I'm going to put my glasses back on because I have a lot of notes here for you. I want to talk about Alzheimer's. There are about 6 million people in the country that suffer from Alzheimer's and dementia. And actually, dementia is caused by Alzheimer's. Now, I don't know any of these things about Alzheimer's or dementia. I've known people who've had both. And I'm assuming that in everything I read, dementia is called by Alzheimer's. So if you get dementia later on, you're very likely to get Alzheimer's. Now, Most of the people who get Alzheimer's are over 65, but there are all different ages. And I think it needs a little bit of a definition. Dementia is caused by Alzheimer's, and it destroys thinking and skills and memory. And simple tasks like remembering to eat, personal hygiene, and cognitive function. But so does Alzheimer's. And so does just aging, because you have so many things filed in your head. Because if you're in your 70s, your 80s, your 90s, think how many things you've learned. Think about how our country has changed from people coming across in stagecoaches, and some of them are still alive. People at 105, 110, and they're still cognizant. They know what's going on. So these two diseases do affect that cognitive function, and it can interfere with the later stages of Alzheimer's. Can definitely interfere with your functioning and having to be taken care of 24 hours a day with a caretaker. Some of the symptoms you can have, like I'm saying, probably think I have it because I have to refer to my notes, can have one or several mild impairments like memory of words, looking for the right word, vision and spatial issues. Your vision may be fading. You should go to the doctor to see about your eyes. You need to see all sorts of doctors about the Alzheimer's. You may have all different kinds of symptoms early on. Your reasoning, your judgment, you're dealing with your financial positions. You could be wandering at the later stages of Alzheimer's before you're bedridden. You could be wandering around. I had a friend whose husband would want to go take a walk, and he'd walk out the front door when she was not paying attention, not because she might be fixing dinner and talking to him, and all of a sudden he's gone, and she has to go out the front door to find him, or all over the house, go outside, and he would wander away several blocks, and sometimes people would find him wandering and ask him if he was okay. And I don't remember if she had a phone with him or his address on him or what, but he would be found. But then he was unfortunately hospitalized, and towards his last days she brought him back home so she could be with him 24 hours a day in his last days. So that's when you're usually diagnosed with Alzheimer's, when you get so bad that you start wandering away and not being able to take care of your own finances and all of that. So that's part of it. Now, when you have mild Alzheimer's and dementia, you're going to start seeing the problem of handling your money, paying the bills, remembering to pay the bills, wondering how much change you can get for $100 bill or a $20 bill, or even figuring out what the bill is, what the currency is what I'm speaking about. You're asking questions continuously, asking people to repeat things to you, or your behavior might change and your personality might change. And one thing that starts happening is you become snappy. Now, I don't mean snappy because you're having an argument with your spouse. You don't like the way he cooked your steak, and you tell him you always like it rare, but he does it well done. I'm not talking about that. But your personality change. You never agree with anyone. You never can say a sentence out loud. Now, some of us just speak very loudly because we're used to speaking loudly, and that doesn't mean we're getting dementia and argumentative or early Alzheimer's. It just means you speak loudly. So don't think that if you disagree over your steak it's not the same thing. Take everything that I'm saying, take it in, absorb it, investigate it if you think a loved one or you might be suffering from it. If you have moderate Alzheimer's, your conscious thought and your reasoning, it starts to disappear. You might stop recognizing your family and your best friend from ever. And sometimes people think it's really good to go visit these people and help them, talk to them, talk about old memories, because a lot of times in Alzheimer's and dementia, you remember things that happened years and years ago, but you don't remember things that happened 2 days ago or even that morning. So usually when this happens, the kind person goes to visit them and the patient, we'll call them, doesn't recognize them. Now I have another friend who ended up in a healthcare facility for elderly patients that had Alzheimer's, and it was a beautiful place in the desert. And he had no immediate family close to him that could help him. But one of my other friends, we were all friends and did business together and all. And sometimes the person who was living in this facility could recognize people and sometimes not. And sometimes when the visitor was there and talking to him, he would be reminiscing about some of the things they had done together and a golfing outing or a trip together, something like that. And the patient would light up. He could remember those things from long ago, and it really helped him. And it's so sad to have to go through this with people. Sometimes these people can't get dressed correctly. They forget that they're supposed to put their underwear on before their outerwear, things like that. They have trouble. Their body is starting to deteriorate. They can't bend over as much anymore. They can't figure out if it's raining outside and you need to put your raincoat on or your hat on, or a hat for the hot sun. And sometimes they'll start having delusions and hallucinations. So they might see a dog they had 20 years before, or even longer from their childhood, and they might start, Goldie, Goldie, come here, Goldie, come on, Goldie. They're having hallucinations of things that may have happened in their life before. They can also become very paranoid, and the paranoia combined with the hallucinations can give them nightmares or a daymare, and they could become very frightened. Maybe one time they fell in a pool and knocked their head and they were afraid they were going to drown, or maybe they missed a wave surfing and the board came up and hit them or something, and they become very frightened and they have this hallucination, and it takes a little bit to get them calmed down, but then it turns into severe Alzheimer's. And this is when they become totally dependent on a caretaker. They're bedridden. They can't control their bodily functions. They won't eat. Sometimes they will be hand fed, and towards the end of life, they may have to be fed intravenously. And this is when people tend to have papers in place about end of life and when you should be unplugged from these continuations, medications, and all that will continue your life, even if you're not cognizant or being able to move, things like this, which also comes up in terrible accidents and things, as you know. So that's one thing to think about when you're thinking about your end of life and your kids and everything else. It's a terrible, terrible thing to have to think about, but it's a necessity. And hopefully I'm helping you remember that. So what causes these things? Well, they're doing many studies in very different universities and medical centers all over the world. And there happens to be a very good clinical study being done at UCLA in Los Angeles, University of California, Los Angeles. I say that because we broadcast from this area. And they're always looking for people to join clinical studies. If the one I'm referring to isn't going right now, they start different studies up all the time. So you might want to call and talk to somebody at a university and see if they have any of these studies if you're prone. A lot of people think, and there is some medical studies that show that Alzheimer's and dementia are genetic. Now, it hasn't exactly been proved, but there's lots of studies that say that, but they're now looking at other things that could cause it. And one of them would be your lifestyle, too much alcohol and too many drugs, and that's going to become a big problem on places like Skid Row in Los Angeles and the other homeless areas, because you can see people on television now that are saying, why do you want to be homeless? Why do you want to live on Skid Row in a tent rather than going to a shelter or getting help? And the woman stands there and she says, well, why wouldn't I? I wake up in the morning, I get food, I get cleaned in this shelter, ostensibly that she's by. And then she says, and then I just go and smoke my dope all day or take my pills all day. And then she does the same thing for lunch and the same thing for dinner. And she was not past 50 and she looked like she was 80. I feel so badly for these people. I don't think the answer is allowing them to live like this and giving them more drugs. I don't know what the answer is, but I don't think feeding their problems is what's happening, is not working. So anyway, it could also be your environment. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of people from 9/11 are having severe problems with cancer and other things, but there's been a spike in Alzheimer's. And the people in Palestine, Ohio, are afraid of these things that are coming down from this environment they have to live in now, with the toxic smoke that came out and the ground where it seeped, the chemicals seeped into the ground, and they just shoveled it up and covered it up with new soil and took the old soil to some other place to dump it. The winds that blow it into places, like the wind could blow it into Pennsylvania very easily. These all could cause dementia and Alzheimer's. So the risk factors of people getting dementia and Alzheimer's are heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, metabolic things like diabetes, and obesity. Now, we're always harping on you to try to live a clean life, eating properly. And there's a reason that I'm against all these people now that are coming out and they're overweight and they're grotesquely overweight or morbidly obese. And I have nothing against the people themselves and their spirit, except for the fact I think they may have a mental problem going on here, because I know in some societies being extra large is a sign of wealth and good being and having enough to eat. But the fact of the matter is, obesity causes a lot of other problems and diseases like diabetes and heart disease. I want to tell you some of the things that you should be eating for these things. But first, I just want to say I'm so against these celebrities and these big, beautiful women people. A person is beautiful because it's in the inside of them. And yes, some people have wonderful figures and wonderful faces and fabulous hair and they wear makeup and they dress nicely, but not everybody is like that. There are many people that are overweight or heavier, and they are blessed because they are beautiful people because it shines from their heart. It shines from the inside of them, and they love people. But what I'd like to say is try loving yourself so that you will be around to love the others around you longer. So let's talk about diet in a couple shows and we'll see if we can help these people. But right now, I want to give you some ideas to reduce some of your weight and try to live a healthier life diet wise and exercise wise to help prevent the onset of these devastating conditions. So, your diet, the food that you should be feeding your body and your mind, because if you feed your body what's going to support your brain, it's going to help you lose that weight. It's going to help you maintain a healthy weight, and it's going to give you more energy. And it'll even help your joints, and your bones will be stronger, and you might not suffer from osteoporosis. And a lot of these things could be inherited, and we're not talking about that. But if you watch your diet, it will help them even if they're inherited. So I want you to eat brain food, which are green leafy vegetables. And all of these are filled with vitamins and nutrients. And if you didn't know it, 20% of your calories go to your brain. So it's important what you eat. If you cut down on your calorie count, you are going to lose weight, but there's certain things to cut out and certain things to add because you probably aren't eating them. So you want green leafy vegetables and things like broccoli and cruciferous, like cauliflower and things like that. They're full of nutrients and vitamins. And you want nuts because nuts are also full of protein and lots of vitamins and minerals. Pistachios are number one on the list to eat. Brain food, pistachios. And it takes you longer to eat them if you buy the ones in the shell. So that can be fun. I've given pistachios to my young grandchildren. They love taking them out of the shell and eating them. Make sure they're old enough to do that before you give them to them. Next come almonds, and these are hard to get. Macadamia nuts. These three beat all the other ones. There's always the Walnut Association is always coming out and saying walnuts are the best to eat. And they are very good for you, but they're not the best. You need caffeine. So you need your coffee and you need your tea. You do not need energy drinks because they make your heart beat too fast. And what you don't want to do is have 3 or 4 cups of coffee today. Have 1 cup of coffee or 1 cup of tea. I prefer green tea myself. It's not as heavy as black tea. It's green tea and it has lots of antibiotics in it. So I always had green tea. Now, tomatoes get a bad rap because the skin and the seeds are not good for you, particularly if you have some digestive issues. So you want to peel your tomatoes or you want to cook your tomatoes and you want to take the seeds out of them, but they're full of lycopene. And you need 9 to 21 milligrams of lycopene in your diet. And that sounds like a lot, but believe me, if you eat them, you'll feel a lot better. And 1 tomato contains 3.2 milligrams of lycopene. Salmon and tuna are high on my list because they're full of protein and you need protein all your life. Little kids need it, big kids need it, adults and older people need protein. And unfortunately, a lot of the people say, don't eat red meat, don't do this, don't do that. But you can have your red meat if you don't have it 7 days a week, all month long. Have it maybe once a week. It's better if you don't have it more than once every 2 weeks. And we have cut down our red meat quite a bit because we ate a lot when we were in business and going out and you had to take your clients out to steakhouses and this and that. And unfortunately, those steakhouses didn't do their fish very well. So we didn't. But now we have a fish delivery service to us and we eat fish all the time because it's full of omega-3 fatty acids. The one thing you have to be careful about, and we eat all kinds of fish, freshwater and ocean. What you need to do is be sure that you are eating wild caught fish. And we use this wonderful company called Wild, I can't remember it. So maybe I do have to mention. We use it as a service. It comes every 2 months for us. And you have halibut, cod, rockfish. But the greatest fish that they put in there and have more packages for, and it's ample, is salmon, because it's the highest of all of them with your omega-3 fatty acids. And eggs got a bad rap, as did milk there for a while. And then Oprah got after beef. So, these different associations go after their competitors because they don't want you to eat them. Oatmeal always said it would lower cholesterol. Well, it doesn't really. It gives you a lot of fiber, and you need fiber in your body, but it's not going to lower your cholesterol. It will if you're eating, in place of oatmeal, a porterhouse steak or something all day long. You should be eating something healthier. Eat an egg. Eggs are still, even though they're up 70% or something like that, they're still one of the least expensive proteins, and they're one of the highest in protein. Eggs are kind of like a miracle food, a perfect food, like a banana is and an avocado is. An egg has lots of protein, has very little calories, and you can eat it one a day, every day of the week. I've been eating eggs. When I was younger, I did eat an egg a day. I loved eggs. I still love eggs. And once in a while for lunch, I'll just have a hard-boiled egg with a little tiny bit of salt on it. Salt with iodine, because I cook without it. So the other thing you need are supplements. And you want your B vitamins, in particular, vitamin C, vitamin D, turmeric. And the B vitamins you want to concentrate on are B6, B12, and B9. And you want D3, because a lot of you don't get enough sunshine. You want beta carotene, lots of carrots. And you want magnesium, zinc, copper, and iron. And all those things will help you lower your risk for Alzheimer's and all of that. So you know what? I have run out of time, but I told you I wanted you to feed your brain. And I'm just looking for my notes. Oh, here they are. I just went through my head and scribbled down some notes on books that I have read throughout my life that I want you to take a look at, because pretty soon, well, right now, you can see they're changing children's books and other books, and they're banning some of them. So these are just 10 books that I think you should read. I think everybody should read. One is the Bible. And don't think I'm going off on a tangent here, but I want you to read the Bible because, well, number one, I'm a Christian and I read the Bible all the time. But if you don't know this, there are wonderful stories and parables and wonderful things in the Bible and wonderful poetry. And so pick up a copy of a Bible and read it if you haven't. It's also the most sold book in the country, in the world, actually. Okay, so enough of that. I want you to move on, and I want you to read A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. It tells about the kindness people have and the people who are only concerned about material things. I want you to read The Diary of a Young Girl, which was written in the Netherlands by Anne Frank. Her father found it after he was released from a concentration camp. She and her sisters unfortunately perished during the Holocaust. I read that in high school, and I was so moved by it. I've just never gotten over the Holocaust from that. And I'm not Jewish, but I can't even imagine the horrible things that happened. And this little girl's thoughts as she was having to live in hiding for nearly 2 years before they were discovered It's unbelievable. Please get your children to read it, and you please read it if you haven't. And then I want you to, because of what's going on in our country right now, I want you to read 1984 by George Orwell. I'm not even going to tell you about it, but it's a necessity. To Kill a Mockingbird, because it's written by Harper Lee, who lived in the South, and it does tell you how things were in the Deep South not so long ago. The Grapes of Wrath, because that tells you about the Depression and the Dust Bowl going from places like Oklahoma out to California so that they could live a better life. They were all stricken by poverty. That's written by John Steinbeck. And The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. That's just kind of like a coming of age book that everybody should read. You all need to read that too. And last, most people think this is a fairy tale. It's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. If you study it and you like to study books and all, you can read this and then you can get some books that talk about what it is. It's actually a foray into politics. So I want you to read that too. And of course, you can always read things on healthy subjects, but that's what I want you to feed your mind with today. Take some time off, get your kids back to reading instead of playing video games. I gave my grandkids a book a year, but they never read them. Well, maybe they read one or two. Okay, I want to wish you a happy weekend this weekend coming up. Hopefully we'll have some good weather. We're just have tons of snow here in California, so it's quite interesting. I want you to remember to cherish yesterday, dream tomorrow, and live today. Thanks for joining me.